right, thanks everyone. Well, very exciting. We've had so many great sessions today. As you can tell from my accent, I'm one of those rare people who actually was born in Austin, grew up here and has lived there their whole life, so there you go. And you may be looking at this and thinking, oh, this guy works for a children's television production company. I don't. We just have a lot of mascots, so there you go. So I want to thank you for hanging in here. Like, I know it's late in the day. I'm very grateful you stuck around. So my aim today is that we'll keep it fun and you'll learn something new that you can take back tomorrow and start working on as a new idea. So I've been loving hearing how everyone has accidentally ended up in product marketing today. So my background, very early on in my career, I started as a talent manager for contestants on Big Brother Australia. And that might sound kind of glamorous. What that actually boiled down to was accompanying them into dodgy nightclubs while I did celebrity appearances. I was really bad at this job. So I was supposed to be getting them product endorsements. I think the best I did was getting them some kind of deal for socks that had zipper pockets in it. That was the best I did. So quickly realized, okay, I'm really bad at this job and maybe I should be following something I'm a little bit more passionate about. So I started looking at more geeky, techie things, and I ended up working for a telco in Australia, working with a lot of marketing technology. Some of that was some of Salesforce's tech. Ended up working for General Electric, also using Salesforce tech. But at this point, I started working for a Salesforce consultancy, and through that role, I had built relationships up with Salesforce, and now I've ended up working in product marketing for them. So very happy to share that I'm much better at that job than I am getting people dodgy deals for zipper socks. Just a little bit about what Salesforce is. You may know us as an events company that occasionally sells software, or you might know us for our CRM product. Although a lot of people know us for our CRM product, there's actually a whole bunch of different products that we sell. So Sales Cloud is our most well-known product, but as you can see, there's a whole bunch of clouds that we have. We acquired Slack recently as well. So I work in our marketing cloud business, and that marketing cloud business has a bunch of different products. I work on product marketing for our personalization product, Interaction Studio. I wasn't kidding about all the mascots, by the way. So there are 3 ideas I'd like to share with you. And I love Farn's presentation on Rev. I think this will be quite complementary to what he shared. So I want to talk about what I've learned about capturing the attention of your sales team to enable them. When you've got their attention, how to engage them effectively, and how to scale, because when you're working in a very big organization like Salesforce, you really do have to scale. How I've tested these ideas, I've been very lucky to work with a large audience to test these ideas out, and although what I'm about to share may not necessarily be groundbreaking, I can tell you that I've at least tested these ideas with tens of thousands of people. So even though they were put into place at a big organization, a lot of what I'm about to share will be applicable to organizations of any size. So I took a look on LinkedIn the other week just to see how many sales executives I'm working with globally at the moment. It's around 25,000, that's the audience I'm working with. And there's a few different levels of people that I work with. So at the very top level, I've got account managers, and they kind of manage the relationship between our customers and all of those cloud products. When these customers start asking about specific products, that's when we'll bring in our marketing cloud sales executive. They've got expertise in all of our marketing cloud products, and they can have that conversation. If the conversation gets more technical or more detailed, we start pulling in product specialists who work on individual products. And while this is all going on, we've also got our lovely business development reps. They're the people who answer the phone if you call us. They're on live chat on our website. I need to make sure they're all enabled as well. So there's a couple of different layers there that I need to keep informed, which makes my job pretty interesting. So when we're talking about actually getting the attention of salespeople, I think we all know how hard that can be. Some things I've learned in my brief time as a product marketer that have worked for me. Brevity is absolutely key. So we all know salespeople don't read. We can write these lovely things for them. We know they don't read it. If salespeople have to scroll, they're not going to read it. If you can ideally deliver something in 2 or 3 sentences, maybe with a GIF to preview what you're about to link to, I found that works best. That might sound silly, but that really is what works. I see a lot of people within Salesforce using, if you use Slack at your organization, you might have experimented with Slack block kit messages. So these build these really lovely formatted messages. And I found that although they look really nice, the way they format is quite long, and I think account executives just glaze over and don't really absorb what you're putting in there, so keeping it as brief as possible has always worked. Keeping it as informal and conversational as possible sounds really obvious, but if you're talking like a human being, they're much more likely to absorb what you're talking about. I am constantly fighting the battle with myself not to use jargon. I'm always calling myself out on this. It could be someone's first week at Salesforce, and I want to make sure they understand what I'm talking about. I work at a global level, so when we're working with international markets, and I know this myself coming from another country, you have to be very aware of the local nuances that you're working with. So you may need to work with your international counterparts to do a bit of research here, but some examples of where I've come across this, when we market to German customers, there's a much stronger preference in that market to buy locally, so they're very big about buying German. That is something that we kind of adjust our messaging for when we're talking to that market. In Australia, where I'm from, and New Zealand, we have a condition known as tall poppy syndrome. We really don't like it when people are very boastful and are a bit too big for their boots. Culturally, it just doesn't sit well with us. So a lot of the more brash marketing that we might do that's a bit more over the top, we tone it down quite a lot when we're delivering to those markets. Similarly, if you're using an American brand to position yourself globally, if you can, try and use brands that are recognized globally. I know firsthand from when I was a customer of Salesforce, if I was seeing stories about American brands that I just couldn't relate to in my market, I just tended to ignore the messaging. I try to keep myself relevant by only sharing things that an account executive is not likely to already know. So every time I pop my head up, I'm sharing something brand new, and I'm sharing something that gets them closer to closing a deal. And that way, hopefully they continue listening to me when I do pop my head up because they're always learning something useful, and I'm not sharing information that they don't find as relevant. And incentivizing your account executives when it makes sense. So as an example, when I shifted the positioning for one of our products, and we wanted to make sure that it was really hammering home with our sales teams, we set up a contest internally to ask account executives to deliver a 15-minute pitch on video to one of the accounts in their patch. And we incentivized that with prizes, so we had Apple Watches. The big thing I've learned, although that process can work well, account executives do not respond to prizes because they're all paid so much they can probably buy any of this stuff anyway. So I've consistently found power works better than prizes. So we had much better success by awarding a prize of a virtual lunch with the highest up executive we could access, and account executives love that. And the good news is that costs much less budget, so it should be achievable by everyone in the room. So here's my definition of a good friend. A good friend, if you're out in public with them, you're walking down the street, they'll turn to you and very subtly say, "I think you've got a booger in your nose." That is a real friend. And I try to take this approach with my relationship to sales as well. So you can ask sales leaders for feedback, and you might not always get a clear answer. They'll probably just tell you about the last deal they had a conversation with a customer about. I like to build up relationships with a very carefully selected number of sales executives that I know I would consider friends, and they'll give me the real truth. If I'm working on something, I like to show it to them as a preview and say, "Look, would someone like you actually use this? How would you adjust it to make it work? Is there messaging I'm putting out there that is really not landing with customers and no one's telling me about it? Are there gaps in what I'm doing?" So having, I guess, my regular booger check-ins with these sales executives has really helped me, especially when it comes to international markets. And look, I think everyone in this room has probably had this experience. You get sent a PowerPoint deck from a sales executive. They want to know, is this the latest version of this deck? And you open it up, it's some horrendous thing full of Times New Roman fonts, and the messaging is all over the place. You think you didn't create it, but as you look at it more closely, you realize, hang on, this is some mutated version of something I built 2 years ago, and it's come back around to me. There is a reason that's happened. So when you see things like that, digging into these sales executives, like, why did someone go to the trouble of adjusting this? Why did this happen? Understanding that as well. So to actually get the attention of your sales executives, I've personally found keeping it as brief as possible, always keeping it relevant, and only sharing new information is really what gets the attention of your sales teams. So now that you have their attention, how do you engage them effectively? The worst thing you can do, as we all know, is show up to a sales team and say, what do you need? And then you go back into the depths of PowerPoint hell to keep churning out decks. I like to show up with a point of view and do your research, back yourself up with data, and show up to these sales teams with a plan on what you'd like to execute. This doesn't mean you're not being collaborative, you're just looking for input rather than actual instructions. Always, always, always give your sales team a very clear path in anything you're putting out there. You should be telling them, here's what you do next in every piece of content you put out. We all know they don't read, so you have to explicitly lay out what they need to do next. And I think something that maybe goes unappreciated with sales teams is that they have so many issues tugging at their attention all day. So I try to be respectful of their time and give them a very clear direction on what to do next. I'm sure everyone in this room does this as well, but recapping every week, I like to recap, here's the top 5 things you need to know. If you're only looking at this post, make it this one. These are the top 5 things we've put out over the last week or the last few weeks that you should be across. I've also found a tactic that works quite well. If you work with Google Slides at your organization, I just have a single slide I update every week with the top 5 things. So all these teams out there across the world can just drop this slide into their deck. And with Google Slides, you can just click update and it'll refresh with the latest content. So I found that's been a really effective way to scale as well. We all know that sales think our job is to take what product does, throw tinsel on it, and make a PowerPoint deck about it. They want to hear from their peers much more than they want to hear from us. So anytime I'm creating enablement content, I try to make sure that salespeople are front and center. So if you've got little 1 or 2 videos in an enablement document, that works quite well, but always feature salespeople and sales leaders talking about real life situations that they've personally encountered. That seems to land a lot better. All right, so a little quiz. Like most of you, I create deal review slides every week. I started experimenting with this last year and started adding an embedded 10-minute video interview with the sales executive on every single deal review slide. These were really, really well received, and the bonus is that you can repurpose these kinds of videos all over the place. So although this video might have originated in a deal win slide, you can repurpose it in other enablement content. So as part of this ongoing experimentation with different ways of absorbing information, I thought I'll just publish this as not only a video, but also audio only as well. And I figured this doesn't add a lot of value, it's just the video with this sound only. But I thought we'll just try it and we'll see how that goes. So I'm curious in the room to see what you think the results were. How many people preferred to listen to audio rather than video? So put your hand up if you think there was almost nobody. Hand up if you think 25% preferred audio? Yep, or 40%? Okay, it was 25%, but that was still a lot bigger than I thought. And I started digging into this because I was curious, why audio over video? And the feedback I got is that sales executives, they find it a lot easier to consume this kind of information when they're away from their laptop. Maybe they're driving around, they can listen to this while they're on the go. My theory about a lot of salespeople is that they're all these crazy type A personalities. They're all triathletes. Have you noticed this? Like the Venn diagram between triathletes and salespeople, it's a circle. So they're all out there training for triathletes. They can listen to this while they're cycling and running and doing all that crazy stuff. Another question. Curious what you think sales best responds to. Is it pick from these 5 things or do these 3 things? So point your arm towards that way if you think it's pick these 5 things, or that way if you think it's do these 3 things. Okay, pretty mixed. So I think these are both good ways to deliver information because they're very prescriptive, but I've consistently found do these 3 things works better. The numbers don't matter, it's do this rather than pick from these options. The more prescriptive you are, the more direct you are in telling them what they need to do, the more likely they are to absorb that information. Here's a nice career-limiting photo of myself. So this is a great time of year to think about planning out your big bets for the year. I like to run these once a quarter. So what am I going to make a lot of noise about at the start of this quarter to get our sales teams kicked into gear? Now, the necessity of my role, when we build sales plays at Salesforce, they're often executed at the marketing cloud level. So they might build together a few different products. To keep my pipeline running, I often build out little sales motions for my own product as well. So you might not need to do that in your role, but where you could think about running these kind of big bet efforts is maybe you run a focus on a particular industry this quarter, or maybe there's been some recent features you've released that together make some new addressable market that you can target. So there's all sorts of ways you could explore this. But again, I think it's a matter of just popping up when you're relevant, having something good to say, and make a big deal about it. Pull in your sales leadership, make this an event that launches, and then build off this with messaging throughout the quarter. So we're all in marketing because we like to have fun and be creative, so this is a great way to get creative with this kind of thing. Lean into your own talents. Like, I tend to default to the weird, goofy, hopefully funny kind of thing, but I've seen colleagues who've launched this through song if they play a guitar. I've seen someone write a children's storybook and deliver information that way, quite visually. So whatever your talent is, it's a good chance to lean into that and have a bit of fun. That photo there is from when I was being interviewed as an angry, sentient spam email who was trying to get into someone's inbox. Speaking of career-limiting footage, this is another internal campaign we ran. So what we were trying to do here, we had a bit of a challenge. So the product I work after, Interaction Studio, it is quite technical. We know that our Interaction Studio product specialists know this product inside and out. Going up one more level, our Marketing Cloud account executives, they're conversant in this product, but maybe they don't know all the technical details. And when you go one more level up to these account managers who look after all Salesforce products for a customer, they might not even know about this product, or they might think this is really, it's a really hard product to sell, it's very technical. So the challenge we're trying to solve is building out these bite-sized 5-minute videos that we're releasing once a week to say, look, this is how this differentiating feature works. You don't need to know about all our features, but the differentiating ones are very important. So rather than building out what were probably very dry technical videos, we decided to launch our fictional TV station personalization broadcasting service, and we presented it from the year 1986, which is why we're dressed like that. So we didn't just present on the new technical innovations with our product, but also exciting technical updates from 1986, like Betamax videos, Atari video games, and Jazzercise. So this was really well received, and obviously we had a little bit of video budget, which is really nice, but there's no reason you can't run something like this with a lower budget as well. And I did actually promise my manager, I expensed that wig, and I did promise him I'd try and get as much value as I could out of it, so thought we'd try and get the cost per wear on this down a little bit. There we go. So it's just to make my manager happy. All right. So when we're talking about engaging our sales executives, what I found works well is being very creative with an approach that stands out and always having a very clear path to follow. So finally, let's talk about scale, because if you can't scale, you will send yourself insane. These are 3 key points I found from a really interesting article in the Harvard Business Review that I read last year. And although this was talking about scaling revenue growth, I just saw a lot of parallels with product marketing as well. So the 3 points that stood out in this article is that there is a difference between growth and scale. I think we all know that. Growth is when your revenue grows at the same level as your resources, but scaling is when your revenue grows at a far greater rate than the cost of those resources. Building capacity to scale, very important for product marketers. Making sure that you've got the ability to address threats and challenges, and you've just got that wiggle room to scale as well. There's a really interesting number in this article which said that if your business is making $100 million in revenue and you're not scaling at that point, that's the point of no return. You will never scale. And if you're not scaling at that point, you're probably actually operating like a $30 million business. So it's really important to think about this early on. And I think to a lot of business owners and definitely to a lot of product marketers, the idea of standardizing things can be quite scary. We don't want to lose that creative touch. But I've personally found as you standardize things, it actually gives you a lot of breathing room to focus on the more creative approaches, the fun things, rather than constantly reinventing the wheel. So some things that I've learned in my time at Salesforce about scaling. Farhan mentioned this, and I think it's worth repeating. If everyone is your customer, then nobody's your customer. So be really honest about where you're not a good fit. I mentioned choosing, big bets for the year. I like to run one a quarter. These are key to scaling. If you're making a big enough noise about these big bets, I've found that they just reverberate throughout the organization. You may want to try and make that launch deck that you use repeatable throughout the organization so other sales leaders can run it on your behalf. Empower your sales executives to scale with you. This is the only thing that has kept me sane at Salesforce. So what I mean by this are things like, if you're creating decks, slide decks in a first call deck, make sure that your AEs, your account executives, can personalize them. So maybe you've got a customer journey slide. Make sure they can personalize that with their customers' details or the industry details as much as possible. I've had a lot of success with something that I call Event in a Box. This is basically a Lego kit of slides that anyone in Salesforce can use to run a presentation about this product. Whether you're running a one-on-one session with a customer or even a keynote like this, all the content is there, and you can build this together using the pieces that are in there to run everything from a strategy workshop to a thought leadership session. There's a ton of content in there. And the benefit is that you're probably running webinars already today. You can just use that content and just empower everyone in your sales org to take advantage of that as well. I've had a lot of success with any webinar I've run that are featuring customers. I kind of build them into this huge library of, here's what our great, most successful customers are doing when it comes to this product. So I know that I've definitely noticed a lot more taps on the shoulder to, can you run an event for XYZ rather, since we started launching this. Your sales leaders will love you if you make everyone's pipe consistent and looking the same. The key to doing this is to tie it into those big bets that I was talking about. Now, here's the thing that your product team won't like about this approach. This often means going after the not so sexy functionality and features. You're really looking for the things that most customers are doing for, what's the first thing they're looking to do with this product, leaning into that and making that part of your big bet, backing yourself up with data. If you can drive consistency, it's really good for your reputation, and it just builds up a lot of respect with sales as well. I think we all know there's a lot of people changing jobs at the moment. So in my books, there is nothing wrong at all with repeating content that you put out a year ago, because odds are there's probably a lot of new people that have come into your organization. So I think by the time a year has passed, there's nothing wrong with repeating information if you're pretty sure that it's new to a lot of people. And of course, none of this really matters, because really a salesperson is just going to look for this information 30 minutes before they jump on a phone call. So you do need to make it easy to find. The key I found to doing this is consistently repeating, to find anything, go here. Just repeat it as often as you can. Now, you might be slightly hamstrung by an internal tool you have to use. If that's the case, I've been experimenting with things on Slack, like Slack bots. So if people are using certain phrases, I just direct message them with a bot and say, we're looking for this. If this is it, thumbs up or thumbs down. That's helping me scale a little bit as well. And finally, has anyone noticed, like over the last decade, we've gone from playing very simple board games to these crazy European board games that are insanely complicated. You have to read the instructions for half an hour. Halfway through the game, you realize someone actually won 3 turns ago and nobody noticed. So I find we often want to play these crazy European board games with customers when they just want to play checkers. So again, this is where you can get into a little bit of trouble with products, but sometimes it comes down to the not so sexy use cases from the not so sexy brands, because honestly, they probably make up the majority of the deals that your team's working on. So I'm a big fan of enabling your sales team to make sure they can go after these kinds of use cases. And also remembering from the customer's perspective, they're not always looking for these huge transformative stories. They may just want to get a job done. So making sure your content addresses, this transformational aspect, as well as this much more simple aspect. So you've got content that can meet any type of conversation. So to wrap up, when you're scaling, carefully pick your focus areas and empower everyone around you to scale along with you as best you can. If you fell asleep in that last session, here's the only slide that really matters. So if we're capturing attention, keeping it brief, relevant, always sharing something that's brand new. To engage effectively, keep it creative, always have a very clear path to follow. And to scale, as I just mentioned, carefully pick your areas to focus on and make sure others scale with you. So I think in my books, that's how we like to treat our sales teams, like our best customers. So thank you. And look, if I can't answer your question today, these are my details. More than happy to chat online as well. Thanks.
Give a big hand for Lee. I like the ambitious folks that just already get in there and get their question early and even upvotes early. So room for more questions to go, and we have a little bit of time. So is it best to brief the sales team about a new product in a big group, let's say 50 plus, or individual smaller groups? What's kind of your thought about that?
I think this is probably an answer that's unique to Salesforce because we're so big. I find it effective to brief the sales team who work on my product and have them amplify the message out through their teams. But I think in a big group, yeah, that works as well. I don't know, it's a hard question to answer because I think I'm coming at it from a different perspective. But in my role, I found it better to brief smaller groups as long as you know they can amplify the message out.
I personally am curious about the answer to this question.
Yes.
If you are honest, do you use Salesforce Lightning or Classic?
I'm going to tell the truth, we do use Lightning. So who asked this question? Come on. I think this probably comes from the perspective of like, although we all make great products, we're not always the best at using them ourselves, and that can be true for some of our products, but we definitely use Lightning. I think we're on the next version before everyone else, so happy to put my hand on my heart and say, yes, we do use Lightning.
That's phenomenal.
If you're using Classic, it breaks my heart. Please upgrade.
What do we get what are we missing on Classic? What do we get if we upgrade, if we start using
I
Lightning?
think like there's a lot of new functionality that only runs on Lightning. In fact, like I don't really work on Sales Cloud. It's a bit of a Sales Cloud question, but I'm pretty sure everything we've released in the last 5 years only works on Lightning. So it's a pretty compelling reason to upgrade. we should have a chat if that's you. Come on.
Awesome. Well, tremendous job, Lee. Let's give Lee another round of applause.